artwork that you're going to see through this particular narration is Zenuno Fraga, who is our magnificent Catholic comics artist for Draco Alchemicus. He's doing custom designs for us in our poetry illustration. These are his own renderings of Girardian demoniac. And the version I'm going to read is Mark's chapter 5, partly because it's the fullest one, and it's also the one Girard uses in The Scapegoat to explain the mechanism of everything that's going on. And they came over the strait of the sea into the country of the Gerasenes. And as he went out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the monuments a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling in the tombs, and no man could bind him, not even with chains. For having been often bound with fetters and chains, he had burst the chains and broken the fetters in pieces, and no one could tame him. And he was always day and night in the monuments and in the mountains, crying and cutting himself with stones. And seeing Jesus afar off, he ran and adored him. And crying with a loud voice, he said, "What have I to do with thee, Jesus, the Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not." For he said unto him, that's Jesus, "Get out of the man, thou unclean spirit." And he asked him, "What is thy name?" And he saith to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he besought him much that he would not drive him away out of the country. And there was near the mountain a great herd of swine feeding. And the spirits besought him, saying, "Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them." And Jesus immediately gave them leave, and the unclean spirits going out entered into the swine. And the herd with great violence was carried headlong into the sea, being about 2,000, and were stifled in the sea. And they that fed them fled and told it in the city and in the fields, and they went out to see what was done. And they came to Jesus, and they see him that was troubled with the devil sitting clothed and well in his wits. They were afraid. And they that had seen it told them in what manner he had been dealt with who had the devil, and concerning the swine. And they, as the people of the region, began to pray him, that is Jesus, that he would depart from their coast. And when he went up into the ship, he that had been troubled with the devil began to beseech him that he might be with him. And he, that's Jesus, admitted him not, but saith to him, "Go into thy house and to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had mercy on thee." And he, that's the former demoniac, went his way, began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men wondered. Girard has this wonderful way of saying, the gospel stories reveal a religious origin that must remain hidden if mythology and ritual are to be the result. That the gospel stories, and he uses this one as the main example, or one of his main examples. The crucifixion is obviously the bigger one. He's saying over and over and over in the gospels, what you have is revelations of the things that have been previously hidden. Girard will write a whole book called Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. Jesus' miracles are actually revealing the things that previously the storytellers always disguised. And they disguise them in various ways. And, the classical pagan mythologies, that it sounds like, oh, the gods do this and the gods do that. Gods are dismembered and their pieces are sent around the country and it makes the land and things like that. And Girard, in his project, is all saying, these are all actually the same story over and over and over again, but it's only in the Gospels that you get them shown for what they actually are.
It's almost like the only way we can handle pure reality is if Christ is with us.
Tolkien thinks of himself as writing myth, that he's writing, we have this whole meditation on history is you remembering back through the records into the time when the stories are in this sort of reality. Right, they become more real the further back in time they go, which Girard would agree with. For Girard, he's saying the myths are actually, they're real, and they have the anchor to reality that grounds civilization. But they're real in a disguising the thing that civilization actually depends on.
The image of the carnival just pops into my mind. So people need the masks on their myths.
Oh yeah, big time.
Civilization needs the mask on its myth.
Because what's behind the mask?
Quite a horror story.
Always. I remind you all that we have these kinds of shootings regularly in Chicago, regularly in other parts of the country, and regularly in other parts of the world. That when Girard's talking about this kind of violence that founds cities, it's every city. First meditation I'm having on the way people are reacting to the particular Tennessee school shooting is how collectively, and collectively is a very important word there, how collectively everybody is trying to figure out who to blame.
The grand search for the ultimate scapegoat.
Christchurch shooting.
In
New Zealand, right? And you have one of these, they're media events in the sense that we have shootings or murders or deaths constantly, right? And the domestic violence stuff that the police have to deal with on a daily basis is horrible. But every so often there will be one of these media events that suddenly everybody gets to talk about, and then the conversation will repeat, right? There's a kind of ritual character to the conversations that happen, and everybody says don't politicize it, and then they politicize it in exactly identical ways. What I've been thinking about, thanks to Girard, is the way the social conversation, it is ritualized in the sense that there's choruses of, there'll be the Tucker Carlson chorus of one thing that you say, and then there'll be the, say, SJW or Democrat or the other side chorus, and then they'll sing at each other like twin sides in the Greek chorus, claiming that this great tragedy that's just happened in front of you. So Pentheus's mother, is that the right character in the Bacchae, is sitting there with his head in their lap, and they're saying, and we can sing about this because horrible, dreadful, that craziness isn't us.
It's her. Yeah, no one sees the head in their own laps.
See, I think the current term is transgender. Yeah. It's like they've been invented to be scapegoats. They've been designed. I think they're being set up to be scapegoats on both sides. Guys, you're not innocent in all of this. Christ is the one that's innocent, not the rest of you, or me, or her, or any of us. The children who were murdered on Monday are innocent, right? Those little 9-year-olds. We are, in a Christian context, trained to look for the innocents in the ones who died. But the problem is the woman who did the shooting, who had been a student at that school, who is now dead because the police shot her. It's very hard to say all this without ending up saying, so you're trying to excuse. No, we're trying to show the horror of the way that this is being played out for us over and over and over again. I mean, it's like Kilto's talking about the schools and the way we set the schools up and the way we set our children up. Well, the other thing that's happening to our children in the schools is they're being drugged. This was a woman who did the shooting on Monday, but the young men who've been involved in shoot-ups in the last decade. So you're talking about Columbine, right? That was 2 men. The only way you can get men to sit still in these kinds of factory schooling environments with not giving them enough like athletics and actual challenge and who knows what else is to drug them, right? So we've drugged our children to sit still and all behave like good little girls. It's a testament to the sickness of the whole community, what happened on Monday. And yes, the reality of the sickness of the whole community is something that we can see parts of it. It's like, I'm going to be able to see this part of it here, and then other people say, well, you're not really looking at the horror of all that gun ownership, and then we will, the political right or the Second Amendment people will say, well, you're not looking at the horror of what kind of political tyranny could happen here, and then another portion of it. It's like everybody sees like little fragments of the horror, but the community itself cannot face it. The demoniac story is from 2,000 years ago. Was the demoniac not loved enough? One scapegoating mechanism will be to blame the Christians, right? We're going to blame the Christians for all being hateful because they're not accepting of differences in eccentricity. And then, on the other hand, there's the effort to blame the transgender activist community for being so hateful because they're sort of trying to force people into accepting them. If only we would accept them all, they wouldn't go on shooting rampages. Wait, I'm not sure we're allowed to say that one. The healing in the story, at least of the Girardian demoniac, is, well, it's not new. This tension, and maybe there is something in the story that at least shows us what we're grappling with, what we're wrestling with, which is Girard's effort to show us.
Christ loved the demoniac.
Let me give you what Girard says about the story. I read it really slowly because I wanted to make sure to unpack it. That one of the things that's interesting, and Zay shows this in his drawings, that the demoniac is living in the tombs, undead to the community. So he's outside of the city, living in the place for the dead, and very significantly cutting himself with stones. He's basically stoning himself. Yeah, oh my goodness. Girard's a very good reader of scripture, because you're like, whoa, I didn't notice that little detail that's suddenly highly significant. Breaks his chains and fetters and everything. So they're trying to bind him. In this context, Girard is saying what should happen to the scapegoat is he gets stoned, because it's a collective death, right? Collective is always going to be significant here. That the way that you get rid of a scapegoat is do something so that, like a firing squad or something, right? You use something so no one person can feel the blame of being the killer. And so here the demoniac is already dead, stoning himself, right? As if, and Girard says this is very important for the scapegoat, mythological terms, that the scapegoat takes it on himself as it's right that he's killed. When Jesus comes, he goes, the way Zay's drawn it, it's like the man is drawn towards Jesus in the light. Demons inside of him are speaking in red. Ironically, because in my Bible, Jesus speaks in red. The demons are saying, stay away from us, go away. What do you have to do with us? And Jesus says to him, go out, and asks his name. And everyone's always, this I am Legion is often invoked in the political conversations now, that these people who are raving out there in the public sphere doing their screaming at the sky and their chants. And Girard points out is when he says he's Legion, for my name is many, wrestling personalities, if you will, but it's also he's been like occupied. It's a whole army inside him. The army has taken over. The Legion, the army says, send us not out of that country. So there's something about, Girard's saying there's something about these demons need to belong to that land, and they don't want to be sent away from so he sends them into the pigs instead. And then the pigs collectively kill themselves. The swine do in this story is, because they're filled with the demons now, they, Girardian terms, mimetically dry themselves. The contagion spreads, so they all panic and run off and die. He says things like the demons possess each other reciprocally. Oh yes, they're now a herd. They're behaving like people do when they're infected with the fear.
Herd mentality.
Totally the herd mentality, right? And then in Mark, and Girard points this out, the people of the region tell Jesus to leave. They don't sit there and say, oh, this is great. Lord, you've saved us all from this terrible. They wanted the demoniac living there in the tombs, cutting himself.
That's so messed up.
Yeah. Because as long as they had that demoniac there in the tombs cutting himself, they were innocent. They had been able to collectively put everything on him. They don't actually want their demoniac healed. First you hate the scapegoat, and then you revere him, because he actually takes away this collective guilt. That if you can throw it all on the demoniac, the swine do it to themselves, but the people do it to themselves too. This sort of contagion of rivalry and such. That if they can throw it onto the demoniac, then it's like they can carry on being a town. The demoniac's out there in the tombs, he's dead, and they can leave him being crazy. The opposite side of saying, and God loved us so much that he suffers through all of this with us. It's very hard to keep hold of the cross in one's meditations on this, where you get to the point you're just saying, what, I just want to be safe from all of this, Christ. Please save me. The word legion indicates the warlike mob, the hostile troop, the occupying army, the Roman invader, and perhaps even those who crucified Christ. The healing is portrayed as a single combat between Jesus and the demon, but then there's a crowd. It's like the fact that it's legion shows you the mystery here, right? The mob is going to kill Jesus. In a crisis of mimetic conflict, the polarization on a single victim can become so powerful that all members of the group are forced to participate in his murder. See, this is why I'm so fascinated by Girard. I keep saying we live in our society is so polarized now. And then there was this other meditation I saw this morning on how everything's also all the same, right? All the Instagram models look the same. All the cities look the same. All the Airbnb rooms look the same. The whole world has become sameness, but it's all polarized. And it's like, yeah, Girard predicted all of this. Mimetic rivalry, reflecting, so that when you get one of these murders, we respond collectively, all to figure out how the scapegoat was to blame.
Wow, this is super dark.
You see why I had this moment when I walk in and I'm going, oh my God.
Because if they don't have this demoniac scapegoat, they want to hurt themselves. Far out. So the collective is addicted to the drug of the scapegoat.
Yep.